Hello everybody and welcome to Every Movie Ever. I'm your host Eric and this is the show where we're trying to review every movie ever made. And today, something a little bit different. Today we're going to go back and we're going to revisit reviews from some of our very first shows that you probably have not seen, maybe ever, maybe not in a long time. But we're going to revisit them and we're going to spruce them up a little bit with some new graphics and the style we've been doing on the show lately. Hope you enjoy it. Our second movie is Goosebumps, the recent big screen, I guess, adaptation of those series of scary books they had when we were kids. It stars Jack Black as R.L. Stine. It was kind of a so-so movie. I gave it 2 stars. Then I saw The Lobster starring Colin Farrell and Rachel Weisz. Terrific movie. I really enjoyed it. It is super weird, a little bit unsettling. It's a very dry, dark comedy movie about a world where the government demands people be in loving couples. And if you're not in a couple, you are arrested and turned into an animal of your choosing. Colin Farrell wants to be a lobster. It's a really weird movie. I don't think it's for everyone, but I liked it a lot. I gave it 3.5 stars. Then back to big budget action movies, this time with Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. If you would have told me 10 years ago they were going to make a movie with Batman and Superman in it that I did not want to see, I would not have believed you. But they did it. This is a really bad movie that I think misunderstands Batman and Superman completely. The only redeeming value of the movie, and that's barely even, is Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman is pretty okay, but the rest of the movie is pretty lousy. I gave it 1.5 stars. Now, if you keep watching this show, you're going to notice that I watch a lot of bad movies, and sometimes I do it on purpose. Home Sweet Hell, starring Katherine Heigl and Patrick Wilson, was one of those. I like Patrick Wilson a lot, love him in the Conjuring movies, thought that this might be okay. It was not. Watched this for a podcast called The Flop House, where they talk about bad movies. I like to watch the movie before I listen, because I'm a weirdo. This is a really lousy movie. It does have a couple of parts that are kind of entertaining, like when Katherine Heigl has to put on like a transparent raincoat to chop up a body. Pretty good. Otherwise, not a good movie. 1 star. Unless you're living under a rock, you know that Disney's got a brand new live-action remake of Beauty and the Beast in theaters. Something that inspired me to go back and watch the animated classic from when I was a kid. To be honest with you, I didn't think it was going to hold up all that great. Let's be honest, it's kind of a weird story, but it really is a masterpiece. What I was really impressed by is that the movie kind of never stops moving. It's a very kinetic and enjoyable movie, and that's why I gave it 4 stars. Speaking of live-action Disney movies, check out Alice Through the Looking Glass, the recent sequel to the Tim Burton Alice in Wonderland movie. Tim Burton must have seen the writing on the wall. He did not come back for this one. It was directed by James Bobbin from Flight of the Conchords and the more recent Muppet movies. I like Bobbin a lot, but he really couldn't overcome this really lackluster idea of a movie. There's not a lot going on here. It's pretty boring. It's worth about 1.5 stars. Another bad movie podcast I listen to is How Did This Get Made? It's another one where I make myself watch the movie before I can listen to the podcast. So for How Did This Get Made, I watched Airborne, the 90s rollerblading movie about a dude from California who moves to Ohio or something, makes friends with Seth Green, rollerblades around. It's pretty bad. 1 star. There's a movie streaming service online called Vudu that I don't know that a lot of people are aware of. Right now, they've started putting a bunch of movies on there for free. I've been going through checking out some of the movies that they have on there, and I found one I'd never heard of called Highway to Hell. It looked kind of stupid, but I don't know. There was something about it I wanted to see. Let me tell you something. I'm glad I did. It's from the early 90s, but it has that kind of late 80s horror comedy movie charm to it. It's no Evil Dead 2, but it's kind of in that vein. This is a movie about Rob Lowe's little brother, Chad Lowe. His girlfriend is Christy Swanson. They're eloping. They take a back road that they're not supposed to take. They get pulled over by the Hell Cop. This is a policeman from Hell whose handcuffs are 2 hands on a chain. He abducts Christy Swanson, takes her to meet the devil. Chad Lowe's got to get her back. Along the way, he runs into Ben Stiller's whole family for some reason, and Adolf Hitler is played by Gilbert Gottfried. This is a forgotten classic. Get on the internet, watch this one right away. 3.5 stars. On another movie streaming service, this time Netflix, I decided to check out Kung Fu Panda 3. Really liked the first 2 Kung Fu Pandas. There's a lot of creative action in those movies, so I thought we better give number 3 a try. As for how did 3 hold up? Seen worse. Wasn't great. 2.5 stars. Vin Diesel's back in The Last Witch Hunter, trying to prove that he can make a movie that isn't called Fast or Furious, and he failed. This is not a great movie. It's about Vin Diesel as an immortal guy from the 1600s who's hunting down witches in the modern day. It's pretty stupid. There's not a whole lot of charisma in it. I gave it 1.5 stars. Next up, I went back to my childhood to watch a movie that my brother and I watched 100 times probably. It was one of his favorites. I didn't like it much at the time. I was curious to see if I would like it now, and I did not. That movie was Surf Ninjas. Surf Ninjas is about 3 brothers. They like 2 things. They like surfing, and then they find out that they're secret princes from faraway land who know karate and stuff. Leslie Nielsen's the bad guy. Rob Schneider, during the height of his Saturday Night Live career, plays like a 17-year-old. It makes no sense. The jokes don't work. It is not great. I can only give this one 0.5 star. Up next, Another You. This is a later period Gene Wilder, Richard Pryor comedy. Always enjoy anything that those 2 team up to do. This one focuses on Gene Wilder is a chronic liar who gets caught up in this overly complicated plot wherein a gentleman who is in charge of the estate of a beer baron convinces Gene Wilder that maybe he's the son of the beer baron, but Gene's lying about it. It's very complicated. I don't really understand what happened. Richard Pryor's his friend, but you know what? Anytime Wilder and Pryor together are really funny, particularly any of the scenes where Gene is lying and making up a character are good things. But it's kind of a miss for the duo. It's not their strongest work. I'm only going to give this one 2 stars. Let's jump back in time a little bit. Let's go back about 20 years from that last movie. Let's look at New Nightmare. New Nightmare is, I want to say, the fifth or sixth Nightmare on Elm Street movie. This is Wes Craven's return to the franchise. I don't think he directed an installment. I was going to say since the first one, but I think he might have done 3, which is the best Nightmare on Elm Street movie. But this time Wes Craven comes back to Freddy, and this is a real metatextual horror movie that's set in what's supposed to be the real world, and it's about the cast of the original Nightmare on Elm Street reuniting to make a new sequel, but Freddy has come into our world. It turns out that Freddy is a evil demonic power bigger than what we thought he was, I guess. It's a little bit confused, but it really works. Craven's got a great eye and sense of humor and fun, and I think this idea of taking the Freddy character and divorcing him from the murderer of the earlier movies and making him into more of a force of nature almost in a way, kind of, tearing back some of the humor and the jokes of Freddy's at least, I think really worked well. Terrific lead female performance. I can't remember the actress's name, but it's the main lady from Nightmare on Elm Street and Nightmare on Elm Street 3. I liked this one a fair amount, but it still can't quite overcome some of its weaknesses, so I'm going to give it 2.5 stars. Let's go back in time now even farther. I think we're going to the 60s with this one, with The Music Man. Big, famous, big budget Hollywood musical, all the bells and whistles, terrific, terrific songs. I had never gotten around to seeing this one before. I'd always wanted to. Finally caught it on Turner Classic and loved it. It's one of those musicals where there is song after song that you've heard in your life, and you watch the movie and you go, so that's where this song is from. Amazing lead performances, amazing side performances, including the boss from the Sergeant Bilko show as the town mayor. I love that guy. This is a great movie, entertaining on every level, some really inventive songs and musical numbers in it. It's a movie I can't fault. I've got to give it 5 stars. Speaking of music, let's go back to 2016 now. Let's look at what I guess counts as a modern musical, with the Lonely Island's pop star Never Stop, Never Stopping. This was the recent mockumentary with Andy Samberg and his friends about a Justin Timberlake type performer. You know, mockumentaries they're a rough business. They're often not particularly great. This one, though, this was pretty good. There's some good jokes in here, some good bits. Some of the songs and performances are pretty funny. It's good, it's not great. I'd say it's about 2.5 stars. Same year, it's time to return to Zoolander with Zoolander II. I'd been putting off seeing this movie, not for any particular reason. Liked that first Zoolander an awful lot. I like Ben Stiller. Thought to myself, this ought to be pretty good. Word came through the grapevine, though, that it was not. Well, turned it on, decided to see it anyway, and let me tell you something. It is not. This is a bad movie. At every stage of this movie, you're wondering what they could have possibly been thinking. The plot is big and dumb and overcomplicated. The jokes are stale, often rehashes from the first movie. It's a sequel in all the worst ways. Everything that could go wrong does. There's some very minor enjoyment, but mostly from wondering what's going on, especially with the cavalcade of pointless celebrity cameos. I'm giving this one 1.5 stars. Slaughter in San Francisco. This is a karate kind of a movie, a Hong Kong movie from the 70s, shot in San Francisco. Small part for Chuck Norris. Now, I watched this movie for another TV show we do. That one is called Bad Movie Brothers, where my brother and me, we watch a bad movie and then we talk about it. Slaughter in San Francisco, which I saw under the title Karate Cop, is that it is a very bad movie. Chuck Norris is in it as the bad guy. Chuck is barely in it. There's some strong karate scenes in it. When they start fighting, that's pretty good. But the rest of the movie's a big mess. If you want to see more of my thoughts on it, check out that Bad Movie Brothers episode. But otherwise, I'm going to tell you right now, 1.5 stars. On Netflix the other day, caught a movie, Drunk, Stoned, Brilliant, Dead. This is a documentary about the National Lampoon, not just the magazine, but the radio hour and the movies. It was a pretty good talking head documentary, talking head with lots of, art pieces and things like that. It was interesting. It made me want to go back and read old National Lampoon stuff, listen to some of the radio hour stuff, revisit that whole thing. I'm not going to do it, but it made me kind of want to. It did everything that it should do, but as kind of a talking head documentary, it's only ever going to be so good. 3 stars. Getting back into my personal wheelhouse, which is cult horror, right? I decided to check out Night of the Demons. Now, this is a movie I've heard about for years, never bothered to check out. Now is the time. This is an 80s, horror comedy sort of a movie. Very much, I think, in the Evil Dead 2 kind of vein. Not so wacky, but having that same spirit, late 80s kind of a picture. This one about a group of teens who on Halloween night, they decide they're going to have a party and spend the night at a haunted house. All of the teens are your usual teenage stereotypes, but there's enough verve and humor in this movie that it really works pretty well. I liked it a fair amount. I've got to especially give it up for the makeup effects. Some terrific makeup effects in this one. If you've seen the movie before, I'm gonna single out the lipstick trick as particularly good. This was a solid movie, 3 stars. And I like Night of the Demons enough that I decided, I went online, I wanted to see what some of the director's other works were. I went to My Friend and Yours, a man who had a big influence on me as a movie watcher in high school, Joe Bob Briggs. Looked at Joe Bob's reviews for this guy's movies, and Joe Bob said, you know what, Night of the Demon's good, not as good as Witchboard. So that makes me want to get around to finally seeing Witchboard. Loved it. Witchboard, I thought, was better than Night of the Demons, not hugely better, but a little better. This is I guess I can't say the original Ouija movie. I'm sure there are other Ouija board movies, but this is one from the 80s. Tawny Katane gets a Ouija board, immediately starts breaking the rules and using it the wrong way. Does that summon a demon to our world? Yes. Are there axes and things flying around? Yes. Are there some great on-screen deaths in this one? Particularly a good one early on at a construction site? Yes. Is the cast fun? Yes. Is Tawny Katane always a treat? Yes, she is. Enjoyed Witchboard a lot. 3.5 stars. Keeping on that horror trend, Fright Night Part 2. Not the most recent Fright Night Part 2. This is the one from the 80s. This is a sequel to that Roddy McDowall movie. We all love the original Fright Night. It's a classic. Time to see Part 2. Part 2, hard to find. Not available on DVD or Blu-ray. I have an old VHS copy of it, and I watched it. You know what? For Bad Movie Brothers again. Was this a bad movie? Yeah, it was a pretty bad movie. I got to say it was a disappointment, especially compared to the original Fright Night. Real rough around the edges, real weird, kind of creepy, in a weird kind of sexual way movie. Didn't enjoy it, but what I did love were the vampires. The vampires were phenomenal. Great bowling alley scene. If you do anything, see the bowling alley scene. That's the good stuff. Rest of the movie, not so hot. 2 stars. Now, as I mentioned last episode, sometimes I see bad movies, not even for my own shows, because I listen to some podcasts about bad movies. I like to see the movie first. One of my favorites, The Flophouse, they did a movie called Rage. Rage stars Nicolas Cage. Cage. It's pretty much a Taken knockoff, or at least that's where it starts. It's Taken if Taken had a lot less money and if Liam Neeson were super paranoid. It doesn't work. Couple of good fights, I guess. Nicolas Cage gets pretty crazy, which is what you want out of Nicolas Cage, but not crazy enough to save it. 1.5 stars. Meanwhile, 10 Cloverfield Lane is the, spiritual sequel, I guess, to Cloverfield, the J.J. Abrams joint from a few years back about a giant monster. This one does not feature a giant monster, but is about a lady. She wakes up after a car accident, finds herself in a bunker. John Goodman is there, being as creepy as John Goodman can be, telling her, hey, sorry, lady, the world ended. Now we got to live in this bunker together with you, me, and this other guy. She doesn't trust it. So the question is, did the apocalypse happen, or is he some weird creep? And here's the interesting thing. There are 2 or 3 turns in this movie, a couple of interesting twists. You can kind of see them coming, but they really work. They really sell them, in no small part because of John Goodman's performance and because of the female lead. I don't do enough research on these, so I don't remember her name right now. I want to say it's Mary Elizabeth Winstead, maybe. She's really good, too. Real solid picture, really worth seeing. 3.5 stars. Getting back on the documentary wagon now, I saw Tickled. It's on HBO right now, so it was time that we saw that movie. This is the movie. This got a bunch of buzz last year. It's a great documentary. This one about a dude from New Zealand who stumbles upon these weird competitive tickling videos where guys tickle each other competitively on the internet. He decided he wanted to look into it, but instead of finding and doing a story about kind of a weird sport, he found this whole bizarre underground scene and these weird twists and turns. More twists even than 10 Cloverfield Lane had. The only problem, once you know that there's going to be twists in this movie, it's fairly easy to see what they're going to be. Also, the production values aren't great. This is a pretty, let's say, inexpensively shot documentary. That kind of hurts the ability to really get swept up in the story, I think. It's still good, still interesting and entertaining, still worth seeing, but I'm only going to give it 2.5 stars. Big hyped movie. This one, well, hyped in sort of the critical and Oscar sense from back in the 90s. Hadn't seen it. Madness of King George. If you know me, you know I'm a sucker for period pieces. I'm a sucker for costume dramas. And lately, having watched Victoria on PBS and The Crown on Netflix, I was ready for more stuff about the British royal family. The Madness of King George is all about King George. This is the one that lost America. This is the one we all hated in the 1770s. As he gets older in life, he kind of goes, well, he goes mad. And this is about him and the court and how they deal with it. It's a little bit stuffy. It's not quite as personal maybe as you would like, but it's still very well done. 3 stars. Not particularly well done, Max Magician and the Legend of the Rings. There is a degree to which I feel bad even reviewing this one. It feels very much a passion project, I guess. It feels like a movie that somebody shot in their backyard, if their backyard was the Renaissance Fair. You know, somebody obviously really wanted to put this movie together. But this isn't just some show it to your friends YouTube thing. They've tried to release it and make DVDs of it, so I guess it's fair game. The thing I will say about this movie, which is very confused and dumb and poorly put together, is that the makeup effects are great. The makeup work on the main bad guy is much higher level than you would think. That must be where all the budget went. Still, I can't give this thing any more than a star. Let's go as 180 from Moana as we can with Nicholas Winding Refn's last movie, The Neon Demon. If you're like me, and I know some of you are, you liked Drive a lot, right? So I'm definitely interested to see what else Refn wants to put out there. Neon Demon is his latest. Neon Demon is a gorgeous, really beautiful looking movie. Like Drive, the music is incredible. Like Drive, though, there's an emotional disconnect, I think, between the audience and the characters. Drive mostly overcomes that. Neon Demon doesn't. The result is a gorgeous-looking movie that is hollow as heck, that doesn't ever really come the distance to connect with the audience. It's pretty to watch, but an ultimately unrewarding experience. 2 stars. Speaking of disappointments, Legend of Tarzan, I'm a big Tarzan fan. This is a movie from last year. They thought, let's bring Tarzan back to the big screen. Let's finally do another big Tarzan movie. They got David Yates, the guy who did the last several Harry Potter movies, to direct it. So you think it's going to be magical. But what I think Tarzan, the Legend of Tarzan's biggest failing, it was also its biggest innovation. You see, for this one, they decided, we're not going to do the Tarzan origin story. You guys have seen the Tarzan grows up in the jungle and meets Jane story 100 times. This is a movie that's about an adventure Tarzan has a little bit later in his life, after he's returned to England, and now he goes back to the jungle to fight Belgians that are led by Christoph Waltz, who can't seem to pick a movie to save his life. It just doesn't work. You want it to work, but it never does. There's some glimpses in there. There's some things that do kind of work. Overall, though, this is a movie where at one point Tarzan fights a gorilla and, folks, Tarzan loses. When I see a Tarzan movie, I want to see him punch a gorilla in the face and walk away like the man. This is not that. I admire it for trying to say some things about slavery and human trafficking. But I think they could have done that and also done the adventure much more successfully. And this movie is not that. 2 stars. Let's continue this trend of 2-star movies, this time with Body Parts. This is a 90s horror movie about a dude that gets this. He loses his arm in a car accident. They slap a new arm on there. It's the arm of a murderer. I know what you're thinking. This is like that movie, The Hand, right? Well, it kind of is, but this time, whole arm. Arm makes him want to kill people, so he decides he's going to go find out, did anybody else get some body parts from this guy? They did. Another guy's got the other arm. One guy's got both legs. Incidentally, these limbs work perfectly, even better than before, but they all want to murder. Turns out the murderer's head got grafted onto another dude, so now the murderer's head wants the other body parts, so now he's killing the guys who got the body parts to get his body parts back. But here's the deal. As cool as that sounds, this movie is not cool. I think it thinks it's a more serious movie than it is. It doesn't really work. 2 stars. Just like we just did, where we switched from a Disney movie to a crazy horror movie, let's switch from a horror movie to a Disney movie. Kind of a crazy Disney movie. This is one of the 70s live-action Disney movie. This one is called Napoleon and Samantha. Features a very young Jodie Foster and a not quite as young 20s Michael Douglas. This is about a young boy who's neither one of those, but this is about a young boy. The kid from Sigmund and the Sea Monster, if you remember that. He gets a lion, and then his grandpa dies, so he gets the lion and his friend Jodie Foster, and they decide to go across the wilderness to Michael Douglas's shack. It's entertaining enough, is what I would say about it. It is a movie wherein a lion fights a bear in that kind of 70s. We don't really care. Let's let him fight kind of stupidity. It's also a movie where apparently Jodie Foster got mauled by a lion, scars on her stomach to this day. It's funnish, but it's only about 2.5 stars. Let's finish off this episode with a sort of, I want to say historically bad movie, except it's not that old. Mordecai. This is the Johnny Depp has a silly little mustache movie. He's an art dealer who is kind of a criminal. He's married to Gwyneth Paltrow. And let me tell you this, Paltrow, who I'm not normally that big a fan of, best part of this movie. The couple of scenes that are Gwyneth Paltrow tries to solve the mystery on her own because her stupid husband is stupid, those scenes are great. The rest of the movie, pretty tone deaf, I guess. It's a confused movie that, here's the thing, folks. I think maybe I liked it. I'm not going to tell you I liked it. I'm not going to say that. I can't decide if I liked it. But what I will tell you is that maybe I liked it. If it had starred anybody but Johnny Depp, I would say I liked it. But Depp is bringing his new crazy Johnny Depp thing to it. That doesn't work at all. But parts of it kind of almost do, I think. I don't know. I'm not going to tell you to watch it, but maybe. I am going to give it 2 stars. Well, that's it for this special episode of Every Movie Ever, where we've been revisiting some of our older reviews. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'll probably do this again. Until next time, we'll keep trying to review every movie ever made. And don't forget to visit our website, northmetrotv.com/everymovieever. There, you can watch reviews of every movie we've ever covered here on the show, as well as complete episodes. That's northmetrotv.com/everymovieever.